Number 6, the immigration debate. A tough new law signed Friday in Arizona that requires that state's police officers to question a person if they have reasonable doubt that person is in this country illegally. It has sparked plenty of protests and rallies. Critics say the new law promotes racial profiling. Proponents say it is necessary in order to keep illegals out of this country. Joining me are Jerry Gonzalez from Galeo, a Latino development community group, and D.A. King from the Dustin Inman Society, which supports securing the country's borders. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Brenda, for having us.
Mr. King, let's start with is basically racial profiling, as I said. How do you answer that?
Let's be very clear. The law in Arizona is not putting anything into law that's not already there in the federal law. What this new law does is it moves us closer to the way that immigration enforcement is going on in Mexico. And it's very difficult for most of us to understand how somebody could look foreign, unquote, in the most diverse country in the world. I fully support the law in Arizona. And what we're trying to do is get our borders secured and our laws enforced.
And Mr. King, though, I have to ask, if the law gives the latitude of reasonable doubt, isn't that a subjective criteria and ripe for abuse?
No, I've been to many rallies where people wear T-shirts bragging that they're undocumented, challenging police officers to do anything. I've been to the Capitol where your other guest has brought in people in the country illegally into the Senate chamber. What we're trying to do is stop the absolute and total disrespect for the law.
All right, I have to ask Mr. Gonzalez to answer that.
Absolutely. I think if you want to respect the rule of law, we need to take a look at the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution is very clear about federal rights and states' rights. Obviously, immigration is a federal issue, and we want to make sure that we can enforce immigration at the federal level. Anything that a state does really is not going to impact immigration in that regards. I think what we do need is we need to push for comprehensive immigration reform. That's why many of the groups are pushing President Obama and congressional leaders this year to pass comprehensive immigration reform. That's really how we're going to get a handle on it. We can't secure the borders without making sure that we can pass comprehensive immigration reform.
I want to talk about that in a little more detail in just a second, but Mr. Gonzalez, I do have to ask you, in your opinion, is this simply a bad law in Arizona that needs repealing, or is this an indication of something deeper that needs to be addressed first?
First and foremost, it is a racial profiling law that legitimizes and legalizes racial profiling. It is likely unconstitutional. It will likely be challenged, and I think fundamentally it's un-American. It's un-American because it does away with due process and really does promote discrimination. That's not what this country is about, that we want to make sure that we have workable policies that move our nation forward. This doesn't get us there.
As you both know, President Obama has asked the Justice Department to examine whether the law is even legal, as you indicated. What's the likelihood, Mr. King, that this whole thing will end up in court and virtually never be enforced?
I can't speak to the ever be enforced part. I can guarantee everyone concerned that the many nonprofit groups who don't pay income taxes, who are striving for the open borders, which is the final goal, will certainly take this to court. Something that has to be mentioned. We continually hear about we have to secure the borders or we have to have comprehensive immigration reform. Not enough Americans know that we tried a legalization program in 1986. We were told that would stop illegal immigration forever. We've proven beyond a doubt that it did not. It never will. What we must do is secure the borders, as is a fundamental duty of the federal government, and enforce our immigration laws. And I would be happy if we would do it with the same enthusiasm that it's done in Mexico.
Go ahead, Mr. Gonzalez.
Fundamentally, again, we cannot secure the borders unless we enact comprehensive immigration reform. If we continue this route, enforcement only, we deported 300,000 in President Obama's first term. How long is it going to take us to deport 10 to 12 million undocumented immigrants?
Well, I have to throw in this question.
We can't wait that long.
I have to throw in this question. Is it possible to tighten the borders with immigration reform without accusations of racism?
Well, I think it is, and that's part of what Senator Schumer and Senator Graham are working on, is a comprehensive bill that ultimately secures our borders, make sure that we have workable enforcement, make sure that we do provide a path to citizenship for those that are already here, and make sure that we keep families together to uphold our values as Americans.
Does a law like this embolden other states, like Georgia specifically, to follow suit and likely bring a divide like we've seen in Arizona on this subject? I'll start with you, Mr. King.
I look to see a law similar to this to be introduced all over the country. We as a people have pretty much had enough of the federal government not securing our borders. It does not require a law to secure our borders. And again, we should look toward Mexico for real enforcement. Separating families sometimes happen when we punish crimes. Illegal immigration is an organized crime.
All right. And Mr. Gonzalez, what's going to happen in Georgia? Your answer to that?
It's not factual what he's saying. It is a civil violation of federal immigration law. It's not a crime. We need to be clear about talking about the legality of that. But fundamentally, the only way that we can truly secure the border is through comprehensive immigration reform. Senator Saxby Chambliss and Senator Johnny Isakson need to make sure that they work with in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that that happens.
Is there any I guess, place where you both meet on this subject, where, you know, you could bring your ideas to the table and make a compromise?
I would have to re-examine any idea I had with which your other guest agreed.
I think we would agree that our immigration system is broken and we need to fix it, and we have different opinions about how to move forward with fixing it.
Clearly. All right. Mr. King.
Thank you, Brenda.
Mr. Gonzalez, thank you very much again for joining us here.